Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the All About Flight Planning webinar. My name is Rob MacLeod. I'm an FAA aircraft dispatcher, commercial pilot, AGI. I'm fortunate enough to get to spend some time flying the Phenom and Citation 560 Ultra aircraft, and I'm also the flight operations team leader. Joining me today is Tim Stahl, and I'll let Tim introduce himself.
Howdy, I'm Tim. I'm a commercial pilot, aircraft dispatcher, and flight operations team member.
All right, so this webinar is going to be about things that we think all new users to the ForeFlight app should know about. Now, we know not necessarily everybody is a new pilot. It's just that maybe you're new to the ForeFlight app, and it's just a tool that you use, and you got to learn how to be proficient with it. And that's what we're hoping to accomplish today. So kind of the style is, if we were all sitting together at the FBO and you told us that you would just purchase a ForeFlight subscription, we'd be like, hey, cool, let us show you some really great things that you can do in this app and some tips on how to make it work better for you. Things that we're going to cover, we're going to talk about setting up an airplane and setting up the map screen. We're going to talk a little bit about flight planning. We're not going to teach you how to flight plan. We figure you already know how to do that. We're going to cover filing and some of the tips and tricks that we've seen, and also how to keep from getting yourself into a corner with filing flight plans electronically. Now, one thing I do want to note, there are some things that we're not going to cover. We're not going to talk about the dispatch product, excuse me. We're not going to talk about the logbook. We're not going to talk about weight and balance, and we're not going to talk about your subscriptions. So just one other thing that I just want to make clear is we're doing this live. Because of COVID, we would normally go into the ForeFlight offices and record this, but we can't. So Tim and I are doing this remotely. Tim's about 15 miles away, and we're doing this. Yeah, straight line distance, he's about 15 miles away. So one other thing you may have noticed, nowhere in our little bios did we say that we are audio visual experts or media guys. So please show us a little grace on this if anything goes wrong, but we don't expect it to. So moving on, we're gonna encourage you to ask questions, and you can ask questions via the GoWebinar message panel. We'll do our best to respond to some of them during the presentation, especially if we get the question early and we see it. I may interrupt Tim and say, hey, maybe we want to talk about this. If not, we'll have a Q&A session at the end if we don't get too long-winded. And if we don't get to your question either during the presentation or at the end, we're creating a document with every question, and we'll reach out to you. We have no problem talking because we love to talk airplane, don't we, Tim?
We do. We like discussing aviation all day long. We get paid for it.
Now, the one thing I do ask everyone to do, if you haven't already done this, is copy this link. It's just foreflight.com/support. We're going to reference a document that we have in that support page, and that document's going to have links to a lot of the different articles that have been written, to other videos, and to other webinars, because really what we're presenting today isn't any really new material. It's stuff that is already published and out there, but it's in a lot of different places. So we're going to be doing shameless plugs for other webinars that have been done and articles and so on and so forth. So shameless plug, you're going to hear that word quite a bit from us today. Now, this is what that website's going to look like. You can click on anything that's blue, and that will take you to the article or the webinar or the web page that you need to view. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is just what should you do before flying or planning a flight on ForeFlight? Well, really the first thing I would suggest is go into the pilot's guide and start reading it. Now I understand it's a large document, it really is. And some of it may not apply to you, and some of it may not apply to the subscription level that you have. But there is a lot of just basic information in there that you need to know just to navigate your way around the app. What was that, Tim?
I said it's good information.
Oh, it's good information. It's written by pilots for pilots. So we try to write it in pilotese. Is that a word?
Well, we do kind of have our own language, right?
Yeah, we do.
A lot of acronyms.
Yeah. So get into the pilot's guide, read up on that. Also, get as much information about your aircraft ahead of time before you try setting it up. If you're an aircraft owner, you obviously have the POH. You've got all the documentation for your GPS units, your ADS-Bs, your transponder, weight and balance. Gather all that stuff together before you try to build your airplane in ForeFlight. The other thing, and I found this just kind of a mistake, is if you're a renter or you're a student pilot, the websites for either the flight school or the FBO that you're renting from, a lot of times they will put a list of the equipment that each tail number has. They use it kind of as their advertising to say, hey, this airplane's got this in it and this airplane's got that in it. That's a great resource to just know what you're going to be dealing with in the airplane, and then you can put that information into ForeFlight when you learn how to put your ICAO codes into the aircraft profile. And we'll touch on that a little bit. But use every resource you can. Obviously, we're going to encourage you to watch the ForeFlight videos, read the FAQs. The Support Center just has a ton of information in there for you, way more than we could ever cover in this webinar or probably in a multitude of webinars. So I would encourage you to get in there. And then finally, and I will shut up about this, I promise, just practice using the app, become the armchair pilot, sit down, plan out some flights, figure out how things work when you actually touch the screen and you get a pop-up, and what the different overlays and what the behavior of the app is going to be. You don't want to be trying to figure it out when the engine's running, but ForeFlight is very user-friendly, and you'll soon be like Tim, who can order his catering with his thumb while shooting an ILS.
Sure can.
Don't try that until the end of the week, but really, that's the level of expertise you should be able to get to after a little bit of use. It just becomes very intuitive to you. So with that, I am going to turn the presentation over to Tim, who is going to start talking to you about setting up an aircraft. So Tim, it is your airplane.
Thank you, Rob. We're going to move through this quickly and hit items that are sticky spots for new users. We could do a deep dive on this, and in fact, we have. So if you need more information, please take a look at the shameless plug for ICAO Filing Made Easy webinar. Okay, let's set up an aircraft. On the right-hand side, we'll tap More, and then Aircraft. Then we will create a new aircraft by tapping the plus symbol at the top of the screen. The tail number, if you're in the US, you're using a US registered aircraft, don't forget the N, November, at the beginning of the registry. And if you happen to use a call sign, there's a field for that in the filing form. If you don't use a call sign, this is what ATC is going to see the aircraft filed as. Next, you'll see aircraft type. And this is an important step because ForeFlight will input the correct ICAO aircraft type code in your flight plan filing. So we tapped aircraft type, and the search bar comes up. We're going to put in the aircraft manufacturer here, as opposed to just C-172. We'll type in Cessna, and we'll go through all their products. One of the reasons why you wouldn't want to just type in C-172 is because, let's say you're using a Cessna 172RG, it actually has a different type code. So we'll use Cessna 172. Next, we'll go down to the performance profiles. We need to set up a basic profile. So we'll say add basic performance profile. And while, let's see, you can put in any name you want. We'll just say basic. And you can add additional information, but for our demonstration purposes, all we're really going to want is the cruise speed and the burn. And this is just cruise speed and burn. You can add climb and descent in there if you'd like. We'll go back to the aircraft.
And Tim, if I can interject on that real briefly,
Yes,
if
sir.
you end up in a situation where you're on the map page and it's not calculating any times or fuel burns, a lot of times it's because a basic profile wasn't set up if you're putting a new airplane in. We've done that ourselves when we build aircraft profiles.
That is true. Okay, we're going to skip down to the filing screen. We're going to skip over the FAA equipment because we are not filing FAA domestic flight plans anymore, anywhere. We're going to tap ICAO equipment. And this is a simple Cessna 172. So we'll go down, we'll say that we have a GPS. I know it says GNSS, but that's for GPS. And in order to select this, that needs to be a certified GPS that's physically installed in the aircraft, not your iPad in front of you. We'll go down a little bit.
Like me, who dropped the iPad 6 times on the way out to the airplane.
Yeah, that'll do it. Might throw the GPS off a little bit or break it. Anyway, so we have an ILS and we have a VOR and we have a VHF radio, but because we have these three, we can select S for standard equipment, and it covers the VHF, VOR, and ILS. If we had other equipment, we'd want to select it here. And there's another plug for the support page ICAO equipment guide, and it'll bring up all kinds of additional information for you. We're going to go down to the surveillance, and this is your transponder and ADS-B information. There are now large sections of U.S. airspace which require ADS-B out. There's a lot of places that don't, but so you'll have to have ADS-B out or in and out, but you can't have both. It needs to be one or the other. And then you'll go down and you'll select your transponder type. You can't just have ADS-B out without a transponder type. So, oops, we'll say E. Okay, go down. There's ICAO PBN, and this can be a little tricky. The PBN stands for Performance-Based Navigation, and it deals with RNAV and RNP. If you're not able to fly RNAV, SIDS, and stars, just skip this. You don't need it if you're not doing that. If you can, or if you're doing something more advanced out over the waters or something else, you're going to need to select some codes here. And to find out more, you guessed it, search for PBN code selection in the support page, and you'll find a document. Let's assume that we're going to fly SIDS and stars that are RNAV, and so we'll select D2. When you do that, if you're running the most current version of ForeFlight Mobile, you'll notice that an R, Romeo, pops into the ICAO equipment codes. And this is simply telling ATC's computer to go look for additional PBN information. If you're on an older version, update it. It'll work out for you. As we're going down, there's dinghy information, emergency information. We all should have ELTs on board our aircraft. You'll tap radio and ELT. Did I miss anything?
No, Tim, can we go up and just talk about the default altitude real quick?
Certainly. Default altitude.
Right, so you see two different altitudes listed in here. One is your maximum altitudes, your ceiling, but the default altitude, as you can see, Tim has 6,000 feet selected here. That's what the flight planning engine is going to default to. So if you always fly at 6,000 feet, put 6,000 feet in there. If you fly at a lower altitude, put that in there. And then when you go to the maps page or you generate a flight plan, it's going to start at that default altitude. So people get confused on that.
Yep, that's true. Okay, let's do a quick and simple flight plan. We are moving through this pretty quickly. If you'd like more in-depth information on doing a flight plan, I have another shameless plug. This one's for Phil's webinar, How to Plan a Cross-Country Flight. In addition, you can read the Pilot's Guide to ForeFlight Mobile. Okay, so we'll tap Maps, and in the upper left-hand side, you'll see a drop-down. This is for overlays and layers. On the left-hand side, you'll see aeronautical data, charts. On the other side, you can select weather overlays, traffic, etc. To the right, you'll see the FPL button. And this is your flight plan editor. You can tap it and tap it again to remove it. Moving along, we have the settings button. And this allows you to change the view of the maps page and information is displayed. Next is the attitude indicator and synthetic vision, if you have this in your subscription. Oops, we'll get rid of that and then go over, here we go. And that's the instruments overlay. You'll see the instruments pop up from the bottom, and you can change them by tapping on the instrument that you want to change, and you can go through and set all different kinds of information here. So Rob, if I'm flying with you, there's the G meter.
Yeah, you can tell how hard I landed. It's really cool.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, last up is this, the routes. These are saved routes. It's a star, and I can show you that in a minute when we are on the flight plan editor. We're going to get rid of the instruments because while they are incredibly helpful while we're flying, we are in the planning phase. So we'll tap flight plan, and we want to select the aircraft. If we only have one aircraft, no big deal, there it is. If we have multiple aircraft, there would be a drop down with a whole bunch of different aircraft, and we'd select that here. We have our basic performance profile, and as Rob mentioned, the starting altitude of 6,000 feet. We're going to go over to the right-hand side and tap ETD. This is your estimated time of departure, and this is really a date and time. So we'll say we're going to take off tomorrow at 9 Zulu, and I'm using Zulu. You can change Zulu to local in your settings. I just work better in Zulu, so there we are. Okay, next up, we're going to enter our departure and our destination. We have Sugarland to Austin, and you'll notice on the right-hand side, we have routes. We'll tap routes, and this is the route advisor. It's going to make some suggestions here. And you'll see these are ATC cleared routes. For example, this one says cleared today, and it has been cleared 707 times total. Something important to note directly underneath that, it says turboprop and jet. You know, we're in a Cessna 172, and that's not going to work for us. The next one down, IDU9, IDU CWK, cleared last Monday, 215 times total, turboprop, piston, and jet. That will work for us. So
Can I interject on that, Tim?
Yeah.
Yes. So you may be wondering, why is it only showing 707 or 215? There certainly had to have been more flights. We take that data from the FAA swim data, and we update it. It updates every 3 weeks. So this stuff is pretty recent. Now, one thing to take into account, we don't have one on this screen, but if you see a ForeFlight recommended route, that route is going to take into account the MEA for the flight that you're planning here. These ATC cleared routes, they're not necessarily going to take that into account, because what they're doing is they're showing you what other people filed. So just keep that in the back of your head. When you're planning these routes, you still got to put on your pilot hat and do your homework by looking, at your en route altitudes and stuff like that to make sure that you don't hit solid stuff.
Right. And at the bottom, if you are one of the people that really like to stick to airways, you have an airway. Okay. So here's our flight. But you know what, Rob? We're going to pretend that it's a VFR day outside, and we'd rather do VFR than IFR.
Even though it's not?
Well, I said we're going to pretend that it's a nice day outside. To get an idea of what's going on with weather, we can tap that and you get an idea. So we're pretending here. In order to do VFR, we'll tap the altitude button, and we'll go down on the bottom left. You'll tap VFR, and you'll notice that the altitudes change from just even to even plus 500. Let's say we're going to do 6,500. So we have VFR and 6,500. Because we're VFR, this procedure, this SID, or excuse me, yeah, this departure right here, we don't want that. So there are two ways that we can get rid of it. One, we can tap on it and then tap remove from root, or we can tap on it. Well, now it's not working for me. Tell you what, we're going to go back. I was going to do the where you can, there it goes. And you can just push it down and it disappears. So we've gotten rid of the departure procedure. But looking at this, we still are overflying some parachute jump areas out near Sealy. So we'll tap on the root and we'll move it down out of the way. That way we don't fly through a parachute area. And you'll see the popover from the right. And because there are waypoints in this popover, but the reality is we want to be pretty exact here. We want to get out of the way. So we're going to use the lat long at the top. And you'll notice that in the root field, the lat long populated in the correct place. And then we have CWK to Austin. On the, there it goes. On the bottom of this, you'll see pack. And this will download all the information that you need for this particular flight onto your iPad so that your iPad is not trying to search for Wi-Fi while you're in the air and you lose information. I'm not going to pack right now because it would crush my internet. I'd suggest you do this before you go out to the airplane though. Next up is the star, and that is that favorite route. You'd type in a name and then save, and it would save as a favorite route. Over a little bit more, you have the SIN to, and we'll get back to that button in a minute. Over one, we're on edit, one more to the right is navlog, and this does a waypoint by waypoint. To the right of that is the profile. If you happen to have that in your subscription, you'd see a vertical cross section with terrain, airspace, weather. It's rather helpful. Okay, now we're going to send this over to the flights. We will tap the send to button, which is the box and the arrow going up, and then we'll tap flights.
And I guess this is where you want me to hop in right now, Tim?
I was going to say, Rob, that's your plane now.
All right. So now we're in the flights page. I just want to say I do see a bunch of questions lining up here, and we will try to get to those at the end. So I can see these questions coming in real time, and if one of our friends who are helping us out behind the scenes doesn't get to you, I'll know, and we'll try to get to you before the end of this webinar. But let's go back. We're in the flights screen now. So we after moving from the maps to this flight screen, this is where we can kind of flesh out the flight plan a bit more. Now, I know we changed from IFR to VFR on this flight, but let's just, for the heck of it, let's just assume we're going to go IFR, and we'll talk about the alternate here. You can't select an alternate on the maps page. There's no place to do that on the maps page. So you have to do it here on the flights page. So Tim's popped onto the alternate screen, and you'll notice ForeFlight is thinking. The little spinning wheel is trying to figure out good alternates for you. Now, if you already know what you want for an alternate, you can, and if it pops up here, you could click on one of those, or you can tap on where it says airport code and just type in whatever alternate you want in there. But yeah, for example, put in whatever you want, Tim. Sugarland. And so we got Sugarland selected in there. Now you'll notice that we're going to give you some information about the alternate there. The little red dot on the side is just a visual representation of what the weather is like. So green is good, bad for red. Pink is bad, blue is bad. Of course, blue is not as bad as red, but you know, if you can find one that has a green dot, that means it's VFR. So we're pretty solid IFR here in the Houston area right now. So, you know, you can take what you can get, or maybe not do the flight, but that's what the alternate field will do for you. So go ahead and select Georgetown, please, Tim. Great. So now Georgetown is loaded into the alternate field. And when you actually look at the nav log, it will also calculate the fuel burn and time required to get over to that alternate. So we'll do that for you. So below the destination, the alternate, you going through the aircraft, the performance profile, it's showing you the map here. Again, you see your route. We only have one waypoint. It's that lat long that Tim dragged and dropped on the screen. Routes, again, if for some reason you have second thoughts about the routes, you can hit that button and it will do the same thing as the route button on the map screen. We don't need to see that, I guess, but here we go. It's going to show you the same stuff. Cruise altitude. Just be sure that you're happy with your cruise altitude. You can change it in here by tapping on there, on that field, and it will give you, you know, the headwinds and the tailwinds and what it's going to cost you to change altitude. So we're happy with that. Go ahead and close that, please. And then you got destination services. This is helpful if you're going and you need a crew car or you want catering. You can plug in the FBO there, and ForeFlight will give you the frequency and the phone number, and you can send them emails. You could even send a fuel order through ForeFlight. So that's helpful. Fuel at shutdown. If you fly in an airplane that actually gives you a digital readout of how much fuel is on board and you trust that number, you can put those numbers in there. The times, I like this field. You can click on the times and you can put in your starting hobs and then put in your ending hobs, and then it does the math for you. And I don't like math, which is why I went into aviation. So I use this all the time. So I think that's a great little feature. And then right below that, again, we have pack. So you can pack both on the map screen and on the flight screen. Now, recommendation just between you and I, if you're doing a flight to, maybe you're doing a flight to another state, another region, someplace you don't normally go to, or even if it's just local, if there's been an update to charts or maps or something like that, it may require a lot of time to download that, especially if you're waiting on the FBO's Wi-Fi signal. So I recommend plan out your route ahead of time, you know, the night before, and then hit the pack button and give it a minute or two to download, because you don't want to be scrambling waiting for your charts to pack. What I normally do is right before I'm about to head out to the airplane, I'll hit that pack button, take care of a couple other personal items, and by the time it's finished packing, I'm ready to head out the door. And I've got the latest information possible for my flight, and it's available to me in the app. So I've got my charts, I've got my latest weather, I'm good. I got my NOTAMs, I got everything I need. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a VFR filing down here. So if we're satisfied with everything that's in this flight screen, we're going to go ahead and select the Proceed to File button down in the bottom right. And this is going to pop up this window. Just think of this window as a user-friendly ICAO flight plan. Speaking of ICAO, and a shameless plug for the ICAO Flight Planning Made Easy webinar that we've made, you want to make sure that the form type says ICAO. If you have any questions, deep questions about the ICAO flight plan or the codes, that webinar I just mentioned talks a lot about it. Also, there was that one webinar, Tim, the IFR filing webinar. That was a good one.
That one wasn't very good. The two people that did that, I mean, they're doing this.
Yeah, they're not much better than we are. So maybe you don't want to watch that. But there's a lot more information about IFR filing in those that I really think would probably be worth your while. But make sure that your form type says ICAO. It's really much more versatile. It can do a lot more for you. And actually, the FAA mandated that you use the ICAO flight plan form back in August of 2019. So you know we don't want to get the feds mad at us. So here we go. Form type is ICAO. We're VFR. We're going to be a GA flight. It's going to list the airplane, our true airspeed, departure airport, our routes. You can change the people on board. So if you're
quick, Rob, may I jump in real quick? So I mentioned call sign before. This is where you'd input your call sign if you're using a call sign.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, because maybe some of you were wondering, well, where do I put it? This is where you put it. So you can put in, you know, Tim number 1 if you wanted to and fly around as Tim number 1. But don't do that unless you actually have a registered call sign. You can't just make up your own call sign. As much as
The FAA frowns on that.
Yeah, they don't have a sense of humor about that kind of stuff.
They'd want you to go and call the tower once you get on the ground.
I have them on speed dial. All right. Persons on board. This is where you can change the persons on board, and it will change that in the ICAO. So if you're flying with grandma, you can list her as a person on board. Again, this is just a visual representation of the ICAO. Down here, this is where you want to make sure that your fuel on board and all that type of stuff is where you want it to be. If you wanted to enter a remark, say for example, you're a student pilot and you're taking off out of your home airport, and maybe you're doing your IFR training, and you want to shoot over to an airport nearby and shoot the ILS, this is where you put that information in there for the controller to see. Like for practice ILSs to missed approach. You put that in there. So that's where the remarks go. Yeah, just like Tim did. Good. Now, below the remarks, we've got the destination airport, place names. This stuff isn't necessarily needed here, but if we're in Canada, there's additional fields that are going to be required for your destination contact stuff. So make sure that stuff is filled in correctly. Dinghy, that's not referring to anybody in the airplane. That's talking about a raft that'll keep you from being eaten by a shark. So continue scrolling down. Tim, there was a question about ELT radios. If you want to click on that.
On ELT?
Yes. Yeah, on radios. Yeah. So these are the fields where you can put in different things about your. If you have a personal survival radio, you can put stuff like that in there. If you're over water and you got like one of those, survival suits, you can put stuff like that in there with your colors and the lights and stuff like that. This is where that kind of stuff is going to go.
Right.
Yeah, right on. All right, the last field down here where it says pilot. Now you put your name in there. I mean, if your friends call you Flash, don't put Flash in there because that's who we're going to be looking for. Well, the pilot's name was Flash, so don't put Flash in there. Put your name in there, please. The email address, you want to make this the email address that you are probably doing ForeFlight on. So if it's one that you can access from your iPad, because this is where you're going to get notifications about your flight. This is where if you have a problem with the flight, we're going to try to email you at that address. So make sure it's a usable one, and have that field filled in. The address here in the States, you don't need to put your address in there. They don't need to know that. The phone number. All right, I'm gonna get on my soapbox about the phone number.
This is important, folks.
Well, this is important. Please make sure this is a phone number where we can reach you at when you're, at the airplane, like your cell phone. I know you all have
cell phone, not your office phone, not your home phone. This is something that we need to be able to reach you on. If you're having a problem and you see an odd phone number call you while you're having a problem, it is probably someone from the flight operations team trying to reach out to help you.
That's right. Yeah, if you see something from 713 or 832, it's probably us. Going, hey, I got a solution to your problem, so pick up. We're here to help you. This is what we get to do. Now, underneath that is license. Here in the States, you don't have to put your license in, but I know in other countries you do. So that field is not required, but definitely name, email, and a good phone number. You really want to make sure that you have those filled in correctly. All right, so if we're satisfied with all that, we're going to do this VFR flight plan. We're going to tap the file button.
Nope.
Tim's got to put some fuel in the plane. There we go.
I sure do. I forgot to put that in.
Now, before you hit the button, it's going to give you this little pop-up box, and it's going to ask you, are you ready to file this VFR flight plan? And just make sure it jives with your departure time. So if you're not flying until tomorrow morning, it's asking you, are you ready to file this flight plan in 20 minutes? Check your departure time. You may have done the math wrong on the Zulu time like I do all the time. So that's just kind of your last second check on that. If you're satisfied, go ahead and hit file. And there we go. So the flight plan is filed. Now we filed a VFR flight plan. Now what happens? Tim, where did that flight plan go?
Well, because this is a VFR flight plan, it will go to flight service. And really, it just goes into a box. until you activate your flight plan. Once the flight plan is activated, it moves into another box with kind of a countdown clock on it. And if you have not closed your flight plan, either by calling 1-800-WEATHER BRIEF or closing through ForeFlight, if you haven't closed it, by the time that countdown clock hits, they're going to start running through their search and rescue stuff.
So I got two good questions on here about this VFR flight plan. One, why would you want to file a VFR flight plan instead of just going unfiled and asking for flight following? Well, because it's a VFR flight plan is a search and rescue function. Right. Essentially, it's a search and rescue function. It alerts a lot of people if you're overdue. Flight following is just flight following.
Well, but ATC really likes you doing flight following because it allows for separation of traffic.
Yeah, we've got a guy on our team. I don't think we actually call him this to his name, but it's ATC Dave. And Dave will expound about being a center controller, and he loves having flight following with VFR traffic because it just makes his separation tasking easier. So yeah, flight following is great, but a VFR flight plan, that's going to make sure that somebody's going to come looking for you if you go overdue. The other question was, and I could answer this at the end, but I see it here. Does the phone number come across the controller's strip? No. The controller doesn't know your phone number. He doesn't know your name. He doesn't know the color of your airplane. He doesn't know any of that stuff. He's just looking at what we would call the short form of the ICAO, which is basically your type, your route. If you're filing IFR, he's got your route, your filed altitude, that type of stuff. All that other information is supplemental information that they actually have to dig for to find it. So it's not sitting there in front of the scope for the controller. So if you make him mad, he's not going to call you and harass you on your drive home if that's what you're worried about.
Right, but if you get into that search and rescue situation, they are able to pull that information up in order to try and contact you. Another reason to put in a valid phone number.
Correct. So there's another question. Let's assume you forget to close out your flight plan. Will flight service attempt to call you first?
Yes.
Yes, they will. They will. If you're, we have a shameless plug. There's VFR filing information on the support page. Phil Inman will go into great detail about this kind of stuff on the cross-country webinar, but they give you a little bit of grace. They start getting a little nervous if you're overdue by about 20 minutes, and after about 30 minutes, first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna call the phone number listed on the flight plan, because you may be sitting in the FBO eating a hamburger, who knows? And then they'll be like, yeah, and then they'll wag their finger at you and say, don't forget to close your flight plan. And that's as far as it's gonna go. If it goes really long, they're gonna start calling us at ForeFlight saying, hey, do you not have any other info on this guy? Can you try to call him? And we get those calls. I'm not, fortunately not too often, but we get them. 2 o'clock in the morning, our phones will ring, and we'll be looking on the computer. Yeah.
Yep.
So, are you in trouble? If they've launched, 4 Coast Guard helicopters going to look for you, and you're at home, yeah, you might be in a little bit of trouble. So just make sure when you landed that you have good connectivity to the internet when you close your flight plan. You really want to make sure that your flight plan is closed. So if you're in the FBO and you can pull up the ESPN page, you can close the flight plan and you're going to be all right. If you're ever in doubt, please just call flight service and just say, hey, I'm on the ground, everything's fine. And you can also close out if you've got the field in sight and it doesn't look like you're going to hit a cow on the way in. Just close out with the guy who you're doing your flight following with. They'll be more than happy to do that for you. So that is that. Now, let's talk about what if something changes. I'll start with the easy one first. What if I need to cancel my flight plan? Well, you got the big red button that you hit to cancel the flight plan, right? And you hit that, it'll ask you if you're sure. And if we are sure, which we won't be on this one here, we would say yes. And it would cancel the flight plan. You would be removed from the ATC or flight service system, and you're done. Just walk away. You can also amend a flight plan. I guess maybe this is where I should bring up the lockout period, Tim.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should talk about the lockout period right now.
Yeah, the lockout period. So there is an FAA rule that if you are, and I'm going to be, Yeah, it's not our rule. It's not our rule, not our rule, not our fault. This is the FAA's rule.
We've tried getting around this for a couple of years now. We've really tried, but this is an FAA rule.
Right. I've written to my congressman about this, but anywho, if you are within 45 minutes of your filed departure time, so let's just say we're going to depart at 12Z. If you're within 45 minutes of that departure time, you cannot make changes or amendments to your flight plan electronically. Instead, what they want you to do is what they call manual coordination, which is you need to call either flight data or flight service or get somebody on the radio and amend your flight plan directly with them. And I think the reason they don't want that is because it's just, you get inundated with these last minute changes electronically and they want to make it hard for you to do. So if you're inside the lockout period, like I know here at Houston, it's 47 minutes. Why 47 instead of 45? I don't know why, but it is. It's 47 minutes here in Houston. So if you're within 47 minutes of the departure time, you're not going to be able to cancel and amend electronically. You can still do it with a manual coordination. All right, so I got that part out. So let's try to amend here. So let's just say we want to change our cruise altitude from 6,500 feet to 4,500 feet. Super simple. Go in there, tap your altitude, change it to 4,500, hit amend, and it's going to say this. The flight plan is out. Yeah.
Don't ignore. You have to copy the changes over to this field.
Yeah, hit copy and then just hit file changes.
And you'll see that it's changed it over to 4,500 here. File changes and then amend.
And that's all it takes. It's pretty simple. And you can make whatever changes you want to make. One thing about amending, I want to just, this is just a tip for all of you. ForeFlight will transmit your flight plan to ATC 22 hours prior to your departure. Now, if you're within 22 hours, it sends it immediately. But if you file 24 hours out, flight plan's not going to hit the system until 22 hours prior to the departure. On the other side of that, your flight plan, an IFR flight plan, will remain valid in the ATC system for up to 120 minutes at most centers. I think all the centers, I don't want to say all, most of the centers in the continental US are 120 minutes. I think Anchorage is 90 minutes. So if you're an hour late, you don't need to refile a flight plan. If you're an hour and 45 minutes late, you don't need to refile your flight plan. They'll still have it in the system. So just call them up and ask for your clearance. Likewise, if you're early, call them up and say, hey, I got a flight plan on file, I'm early. They might grumble because they just do. And they'll find your flight plan and they'll say, okay, we have you for this time. And you just say, well, I'm ready to go at this time, or I'm ready to go now. Just tell them that. The flight plan will be in there.
That's really particular to IFR flight plans when you're calling for clearance.
Yep, exactly. So just you do have wiggle room on that. We see people, trying to amend their flight plans by 5 minutes. It's like, no, you just don't do that. You're going to be fine. You're creating more work than is needed. So that's the essentials of canceling, amending a flight plan. We talked about the activating. Tim, can you think of anything I did not cover?
If you are in Canada, if you are lucky enough to fly up in beautiful Canada, you will not see an activate button on your VFR flight plan because it activates at the time of your departure. It's, your estimated departure time. Nav Canada will activate your VFR flight plan at that point in time. So if you're going to be 2 hours late getting to the airport, you need to make an amendment if you are in Canada. Otherwise, your flight plan will become active at your estimated time of departure.
Right on. So I think, Tim, I think we're done with the iPad unless we have some questions. So maybe we'll just leave this screen up for a minute and I'll throw up some questions that have been asked here. So one person is asking, is there any way to check weather without entering a tail number? So Tim, why don't you hit the airport screen and show how you can check your weather, at least at a particular location, without entering a tail number. So here, you just go into the airport screen. Yeah, go ahead, Tim, you can talk about it.
Well, I was going to say, okay, so we've entered the airport up in the search bar. It pulls it over onto the left, which is your recents and favorites and browse. And then you'll come over and you'll tap weather, and you'll get METAR both in the coded format and in the English version. You'll get some nearby weather at the airports nearby. If you want to go down one, you'll find TAF, also coded, and then English version. MOS is an interesting, it's a discussion format. Daily, it's just
It's
easier
kind
to
of like
understand.
WeatherBug. It's, it's something you can look at for long-term stuff.
Right, yeah, it's not really, I mean, it's not aviation weather, it's just general weather, maybe to tell the guy in the back. And then you have winds at different altitudes, winds, temps.
Right. Now, if I didn't fully answer your question, and this is from Bruce in Peoria. I don't know where Bruce is, but this, if you want, you don't have to file a flight plan to get the weather. You can just, just enter in any airplane, plan out a route, and you can go into the flights page. Tim, go back to the flights page. And you don't have to file a flight plan to get your weather. What you do is just scroll up to the top, hit the briefing button. Hopefully this won't crash it's a short flight, so it probably won't. And it's going to generate a full weather briefing for you. And then if you want to look at, the time before or the time, later, you just go in there and change the date and it will start retrieving the briefing for that time. So that's the easiest way. I do it all the time for flights that are coming up. I'll just generate briefings because I'm kind of a weather nerd and look at what the trend's going to be. So you can get that, and it's going to give you a lot of the information, but it's going to give you in a more user-friendly version. But it's going to give you a full, complete, and I'm going to put air quotes up there, legal weather brief for what you need. Now, Tim's kind of showing one of the older versions, but depending on which type of briefing you have selected, it's going to give you all the information you're going to need for your flight.
Another thing you can do, remember on the top left, we have the drop down, and on the right-hand side, we have weather information that we can put in here. So if we want to do surface winds, it'll display that. If we want to do, of course, the radar is a big one, and you can see that.
Yeah,
you can
and the
select
surface
multiple.
winds, sorry, Tim, the surface winds, you got to kind of zoom in and out a bit to get them to display correctly because they're
Yeah,
based on where the info is coming, but you can drop a bunch of different layers on here.
correct. And radar composite is the entire stack of clouds. Radar lowest tilt is just the bottom layers. So for example, if you're coming into an airport, you might be real concerned about what's going on down close to the airport. That'll give you a lower tilt. Okay.
Right. Couple other questions. One, can I file a simulated flight plan if I'm working on a simulator? No, don't file simulated flight plans, please. Use ForeFlight for, you can use it for all kinds of different things for a simulator. Just don't hit the file button because it doesn't know. So if your flight simulator is hooked up and you're flight simming on a 737, it's going to file your flight plan live.
We'll see it.
Yeah, we will definitely see that because it pops up loud and clear on our screens when that happens. So, but you can use it for everything up to the file button. Don't hit the file button if you're a flight simmer. If we do an alternate search on an IFR flight plan, will it only bring up those that make legal weather minimums? No, no, it won't. It will show you what the weather is, but it's up to you to decide what where it's safe to go. We're not making that.
Right. You have to use pilot judgment in order to make the decision.
Right. Tim, another person is asking to show again where we toggled VFR to IFR. So there's two places you can do it. One is here on the maps. Show them, Tim. You just click on the altitude. Yep.
Yep. And then you can change IFR to VFR in the lower left-hand corner of that pop-up. The second location is over on flights. Go back. Right here above the map, you'll see flight routes, flight rules, and you'll tap it and you have IFR, VFR, and you have some other things. The YFR, ZFR are composite. They're not usable inside of the United States. DVFR is
Oh,
for
mhm.
crossing an ADIS coming into the United States. And of course, VFR DC SFRA is for use around Washington, D.C. inside the SFRA, but not inside the FRZ.
Right, and there is shameless plug once again. I have a video on the support center, and I believe the link is included in the links for this, where I go into great detail on how to file an SFRA flight plan. Tim, let's talk about DVFR just real quick
Sure.
for everybody here. So you're the DVFR expert, so why don't you talk about it?
I'm a DVFR expert. Okay. Here's the deal with DVFR. It is a defense VFR flight plan, and you will need one if you are crossing the ADIZ, the ADIZ. The ADIZ is not between the United States and Canada. If you're flying between the US and Canada, there's no ADIZ, there's no need for a DVFR flight plan, there's a VFR flight plan. It's okay, it works. If you're coming in from the Caribbean and you're crossing the ADIZ, you need to file a DVFR flight plan.
Yep. And it's a different kind of flight plan than a VFR flight plan. So you need to do that. So Bahamas, Mexico, but not Canada. So
correct. And while it is a different type of flight plan, ForeFlight does that all automatically in the background. You're not going to be filling in anything weird. The form will look the same. Everything will look the same to you, but we add in some ETE information.
Right. Another question is maybe I didn't explain this super well for SK. If the departure time is 50 minutes after the submitted departure time, will ATC adjust their waiting time for search and rescue? Yeah, the clock doesn't start ticking on a VFR flight plan until you activate it. So it's when you activate the flight plan that the clock starts ticking. So if your time en route is supposed to be an hour, that hour starts when you activate the flight plan. So you can be up to 50 minutes late, sure. You can do that, but that timer doesn't start till after that. Does the phone number come across on the controller strip? I talked about that before. If you want to put your phone number in the remarks section, I guess you could. Yeah, maybe they'll try that first without going through the steps to pull up the supplemental info. You can put that in there, but you may not. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. You could do it. After what time does it make sense to reload the trip weather pack? I would say do it right before you head out to the plane, just to make sure you get the latest. The weather may not have changed because a new TAF may not have come out. You might be between METARs, but you may not be between a SIGMET or a NOTAM may have popped up.
Yeah, or and if it's supposed to be popped up somewhere, you know, like if your alternate got a specie because of high winds all of a sudden, you want to know that when you're walking out to the airplane, not having it. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so here one question. This one came in really early, and it's about a multi-leg flight plan. We get this a lot, especially like student pilots who are going on their long cross country, and they're going to land at one airport, and then they got to land at another one. They got to do their 150-mile long cross country. The ForeFlight engine is set up to calculate between a departure and a destination. So really, if you're going to be doing multi-legs, just create each leg individually, and then ForeFlight will calculate everything correctly for that. Now, I understand if you're coming out of your home airport and you're just going to go shoot touch and goes at an airport, you don't want to, you're not going to be wanting to try to refile or create a new flight plan every time you do a touch and go. On a VFR flight plan, you can enter that airport as a waypoint, but it's not going to act as an individual flight for every touch and go, if that's what you're talking about. So in the end, I would just say, look, ForeFlight, it's easy to create a flight plan. Once you've done it a couple of times, you can probably create a flight plan, a VFR flight plan, you know, in a couple of minutes and just knock those out. But no, we don't have the ability for you to create multiple flights in one flight. They're all individual. They're their own flight in ForeFlight.
That being said, if you do want, let's say you're going to be at that airport for half an hour shooting touch and goes, what you can do is you can go in, add the airport as a waypoint, as Rob said, and then create a delay at that waypoint. And if you'd like to know more about creating delays in ForeFlight, shameless plug, go to the support center and type in delay. and you'll get a page.
You're like a mind reader. We had a ticket. We had a question on that while you were talking, and I tried to tap out that answer to one of our
Good
the folks on here. So I mean, you're good. You're good. I like this question. I think this one is for you, Tim. Have you got an employee near Kirkland, Washington? Well, you know, it's funny you should ask. Tim is available for children's birthday parties. He's got a beautiful singing voice, and now we're mostly based here in Houston. But look, we'd be more than happy to call you on the phone and have a conversation, even a long conversation with you. We have even at some points have video meetings with flight schools and clubs and stuff like that. If you're interested, reach out to us, because as we said at the beginning, we'll talk airplanes.
We love talking aviation. Happy to talk your ear off about aviation. You'll be asking us to leave, and we'll still be talking about aviation.
All right, I'm going to make this the last question, Tim. I think this is an interesting one here. Actually, I'll make this the second last question. One person's asking about IHAP Plus. Yeah, one thing, and I probably neglected to mention that at the beginning, the screens that you're seeing Tim display, we're using a basic ForeFlight subscription, just simply because that is probably what most people have. So what you're seeing here is it's a basic ForeFlight subscription is what we're using. So you're going to have additional features in Plus that we didn't necessarily talk about.
Right.
Last question, Tim, and I'm going to let you talk about this because Tim spent a good part of his life landing on the back of Caribou up in Alaska. So does a VFR flight plan conversing Canada from Washington, I'm assuming Washington State, to Alaska's southeast region like Ketchikan? How do you file that, Tim?
Yeah, again, there's no ADIZ between the United States and Canada, even if you're going through it. In fact, I've flown that exact route. And all you do is you file a VFR flight plan, you open it when you're on the ground, and you go. When you are going through Canada, you're going to be talking to people. You'll talk with Vancouver as you're going up, and then you'll cross in the United States and you'll get some fuel.
Yeah. So the ADIZ is
just simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. The ADIZ is around, like, think of NORAD, right? Canada and US are part of NORAD, so there is no ADIZ between us and Canada. So
one thing to know though, Nav Canada will bill you for your radio usage with them. So you're going to get a bill in the mail. Just heads up.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. So let's see. Okay, there are a bunch of questions that came down here at the end. I'm sorry, we are at the top of the hour, Tim. It looks like we made it without doing anything extremely foolish. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. For those of you who did not get your questions answered, we will be reaching out to you either via email. We'll email you an answer. Some of them we got to think about because some people had some really good questions in here. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you most of all for using ForeFlight. We know it's a great product and it's a revolutionary product, and we're going to continue to make this product even better. And be safe out there, everyone. Thank you.
Real quick, Rob, I would like to say one thing. As Rob mentioned before, we are not IT guys, and while this webinar went smoothly, the reason it went smoothly is because of the hard work of multiple people behind the scenes. And I'd like to say thank you to everybody, Sam, Thomas, everyone else who lent a hand to making this webinar happen. Appreciate it.